Hello everybody. Today we are going to study anatomy of human axilla. Axilla is a canal through which all the structures enters inside the upper limb. And one of the most important structure out there is brachial plexus. Brachial plexus is the plexus commonly injured in the body, and that's why it is the most commonly asked question in theory and practical exams. So I'm dividing this lecture into few parts. In the first part we'll study the boundaries of axilla, and in the second part we'll study the anatomy of brachial plexus. So, by the end of today's lecture, you'll be familiar with anatomy and the boundaries of axilla with the brachial plexus in detail. Axilla or armpit is a pyramidal space situated between upper part of arm and lateral thoracic wall. So this area is a pyramidal shaped space. As you can see that it is four-sided pyramid. So it is having an apex, a base, anterior wall, posterior wall, medial wall, and a narrow strip like lateral wall. Let us see all the boundaries in detail. The first is apex. The apex is present in this region. So it is a communication from the neck to upper limb, and it is triangular in shape. It is also called cervico-axillary canal because all the structures from the cervical region goes into upper limb, goes through this canal. Here you can see that this is a triangular shaped space which is called cervico-axillary canal. The anterior boundary is by clavicle, posteriorly it is bounded by superior border of scapula, and medially the outer border of first rib. And when the structures going into upper limb, the great vessels and nerves has to pass through cervico-axillary canal. The base or floor is here. It is a concave and it is having two folds, anterior axillary fold and posterior axillary fold. As you can see that it is concave. Here this is the anterior axillary fold and this is the posterior axillary fold. The anterior axillary fold is formed by lower border of pectoralis major muscle, the muscle present here in front, and posterior axillary fold is formed by latissimus dorsi muscle and teres major. Latissimus dorsi comes from the back and teres major is a muscle attached from the scapula. So this is how the base is formed, and you can see that there are fascias in the axilla, in the base of axilla. This fascia is a continuation of the pectoral fascia. The deep fascia covering the pectoralis major muscle is called pectoral fascia. The same fascia continues and covers the arm, and then it is called brachial fascia. So here you can see that this is anterior axillary fold formed by pectoralis major. This is posterior axillary fold formed by latissimus dorsi and teres major, and the concavity of the base has a fascia. Now let us understand walls: anterior wall, posterior wall, medial wall and lateral wall with its relations. The anterior wall, the most anterior structure at the wall is pectoralis major. When we reflect the pectoralis major muscle, here we see the structures under the cover of pectoralis major. Above there is subclavius muscle below the clavicle, and here there is pectoralis minor muscle. Between the subclavius and pectoralis minor, this is the clavipectoral fascia. We know that clavipectoral fascia is pierced by certain structures that we can see here. After that, the clavipectoral fascia splits and closes pectoralis minor muscle. At the lower border pectoralis minor muscle, it reunites and then continues down as a double layer structure as a suspensory ligament of axilla, and here it fuses with the axillary fascia. I hope we can make out in this schematic figure that anteriorly there is pectoralis major, below that there is subclavius, below subclavius there is pectoralis minor. Both of them are enclosed by double layer clavipectoral fascia, and here after the pectoralis minor muscle, clavipectoral fascia goes down as a suspensory ligament of axilla and it suspends the axillary fascia from above. That's why axillary fascia attains concavity. So this is anterior wall, and what you see behind is the posterior wall. This is our anterior axillary fold, and in the posterior wall we can see there are three muscles. Let's see those three muscles in little detail. So posteriorly, when we remove all the structures from the anterior side, what we see behind is the posterior wall of axilla. Posteriorly, above there is subscapularis. The muscle arises from subscapular fossa. Then there is teres major muscle from the lateral border of scapula, and there is latissimus dorsi coming all the way from the iliac crest. So above downward posterior wall there is subscapularis, teres major and latissimus dorsi muscle. So here you can see that subscapularis, teres major and latissimus dorsi. So posterior fold of axilla is formed by lower border of latissimus dorsi and teres major muscle. So here you can again see the posterior wall, subscapularis, teres major and latissimus dorsi. So the lateral wall is a narrow strip-like area where the anterior wall and posterior wall meets. Here you can see that this is the lateral wall. Here the anterior wall and posterior wall meets. And if we see that the anterior wall muscle is pectoralis major muscle and posterior wall muscles are latissimus dorsi and teres major muscle. So these muscles are getting inserted onto lateral and medial lip of bicipital groove. So bicipital groove represents the lateral wall of axilla. It's a narrow strip-like groove which contains a long head of biceps muscle. The long head of biceps muscle arises from supraglenoid tubercle and short head of biceps muscle arises from coracoid process. The medial wall is represented by upper 3 to 4 ribs and with intercostal spaces. A long thoracic nerve, here you can see this is the nerve which is running long. It's a branch of brachial plexus. It is going and supplying a muscle that is called serratus anterior. Serratus anterior muscle you see here arises by 8 digitations from the upper 8 ribs. From the second intercostal space, one important nerve in relation with the medial wall is this nerve you see. This is called intercostobrachial nerve. So it is from the intercostal space to the brachial region, arm region. That's why it is called intercostobrachial nerve. Now intercostobrachial nerve, here you see this intercostobrachial nerve. This is undivided lateral cutaneous nerve of second intercostal space. So from the second intercostal space, the lateral cutaneous nerves which comes out do not divide. But here instead of dividing, it goes into the brachial region and communicates with one cutaneous nerve of brachial region. We'll see that little in detail. Now, these are the contents of axilla. Axilla contains axillary artery, veins, cords of brachial plexus, lymph nodes, axillary fat, and sometimes axillary tail of breast. But now I'm going to divide the next lecture into these parts, and next lecture we'll talk about brachial plexus in detail.